Okay, boomer. Yeah, I'm a boomer. What can I do about it? I was into photography ever since I was a little kid. And as I got some spare bucks, I bought gear. But back in the day, everything was film. And cameras and lenses were expensive. So I got out of photography for a while, and then I got back in with these cheap film point and shoots. And then I discovered the used camera market, like in the mid to late 80s. And I started buying cameras that were 20, 30 years old. And then I acquired some, what they call today, vintage glass. So what does a person do when they got all this vintage glass? No one uses film anymore. Well, I bought a Sony. What model is this? ILCE 5100. Very cheap. A lot of features packed. Mirrorless. It's like the best point and shoot in the world. Plus it has interchangeable lenses. Plus the way they designed it, they can make adapters for all this vintage glass. Now I had a handful of vintage glass, a couple of zooms, some primes, 50 millimeters, a couple of 28 millimeters, 135. But then after I got these cameras, I started buying other vintage glass that I always dreamed about in the day I couldn't touch. Like here's a Canon, this is an L lens. Canon zoom lens, FD mount, 24 to 35, 1 to 3.5. I got a lot of my vintage glass I got at KEH during Georgia. And so here's a Fotodiox adapter. Goes on the Sony camera. And then you have the Canon FD lens. I also happen to own, which I got used from KEH, the ILCE 5000, which has slightly less megapixels, and it's got pretty much all the same features. This is a FD to Sony Emount adapter. This is a M42 to Sony Emount adapter. And I got some a Sears 28 millimeter on it from back in the day. I think I paid 25 bucks for it used. From what I understand, the Sears 28 millimeters are made by Tokina. It's a nice lens. I bought this back in the day when I was into film. Quaternary, 300 millimeter, 1.56 mirror lens. Look how small that is. That's a 300 millimeter. Plus I have a 2x extender on it, so it turns into a 600 millimeter. It's about the size of less than a 200 millimeter. And this is a K-mount adapter. And I also have the, oh yeah, this is the Fotodiox K-mount adapter. Canon FD 100 millimeter macro f4. Legendary lens, excellent. Get them cheap, even brand new. They look like they're brand new. You can get them from KEH. I pay a little bit premium for cosmetic, you know, like new. If you don't mind if they're beat up or they got some fungus on them, then you can get them all dirt cheap. Here's a Canon FD 15 millimeter f2.8 fisheye, another legendary lens. And all these go on the Sony Emount. Here's a Canon. This is a cheapo, but it's still got nice optics. This is what is it? 35 to 70, 3.5 to 4.5 FD mount. You know, that's the thing. These cheap Sony Emount cameras, they don't have in-body vibration reduction or image stabilization. So as long as you're using a short focal length, like in the wide-angle range, or you know, up to 70 or 100 millimeters, you can get away with high ISO and fast shutter speed. But you know, anything above that, like this 300 millimeter, you got to use a tripod. What is this? Oh, this is a Canon 28 2.8 FD mount lens. I happen to have an AE1 program, which is a 35mm camera from back in the day. And that's why I got this for. Now, all these lenses I got cheap back in the day, and then I bought some to round out my collection for, you know, shooting ops. I chose the Fotodiox mount because they're relatively cheap, they're well made, they maintain the infinity focus, they're very sturdy as far as I can tell, they're all metal construction. The FD mount is a little goofy, and the old style FD mount are a little bit of a problem, but the new ones, like this is the new one with the black ring, these come on pretty easy. And the FD mount, you have to turn this blue dial to the install function, and then it comes off just like that. The FD mount you have to line up a little bit, but it goes on just like that, real easy. And I use these lenses a lot. One of the things I like about the Sony series is they have built-in Panorama, so it takes like a series of pictures to make 180 degrees panorama, stitches it in right in the camera. I also have some 500mm. I have the Canon FD 500mm f8. I have the Sigma 600mm f8 and FD mount also. So if you're a boomer and you have all these old lenses kicking around, pick one of these up cheap on the aftermarket. Go to KEH. You can buy them brand new for less than $200. They're full of features, and you could buy these adapters cheap. I recommend the Fotodiox. I have no problem with these. I found that the K-mount always has a little plane, but I think that's the K-mount, not the adapter. But I have no troubles, practical troubles, when I use the shoot with it. And all this gear fits into one bag. So if you go out and you have like you know, two systems, like a K-mount, screw mount, FD mount, and all these options for lenses, and you can't beat it. I highly recommend it.